Hola a todos y a todas. Tenemos el gran placer de anunciaros que próximamente vamos a celebrar el primer workshop de Power Intelligence, Inteligencia del Poder, en España. Se trata de un taller de 3 días que tendrá lugar el próximo otoño del 4 al 6 de octubre.
Y es una gran oportunidad para el Movement de presentaros a una referente mundial en cuanto a el trabajo que ha hecho con el tema de poder, que es Julie Diamond, y que ha estudiado y ha trabajado con todo lo que es el tema de poder individual y el tema de poder dentro de las organizaciones.
El taller va a tener 2 partes diferenciadas. La primera parte, que es 1 día y medio, y donde Julie nos va a explicar su estudio en organizaciones de los últimos años y donde va a hablar de cómo juega el poder en cualquier organización, en las relaciones personales.
Y los participantes tendrán la oportunidad de poderse certificar en la segunda parte de este taller en esta gran herramienta que es el Power Index, que es un 360 que se da y se puede aplicar en las organizaciones para que sus líderes, sus managers, conozcan, tengan conciencia de los diferentes niveles de poder individual que tienen y cuál es su impacto en sus entornos.
Estamos seguros que este workshop, tanto si venís a las 2 partes como a la primera, os va a ayudar mucho en vuestro trabajo de acompañar líderes, acompañar equipos y acompañar organizaciones a que den su máxima versión.
Y os esperamos el día 4 de octubre en Barcelona para poder escuchar y poder certificaros en Power Index. Muchas gracias.
Nos vemos allí.
Well, the interesting thing is, ideas we think we're choosing ideas, but they tend to choose us, right? If you look back, you've always been interested in certain things. I've always been interested in power. So my earliest research was on the problems of power. I did my doctoral work on power in small groups, how people negotiated power and status in their interactions with others. One of the things that fascinate me about power is that power is not static. Power is so fluid. And that power is not associated with title or with position or with status. Everybody has power, and everybody uses and negotiates different strategies for sort of jockeying for power. Kids can yell and scream in the supermarket, and that's a show of power. Somebody at work who doesn't have a high position of power can withhold information or share information, and they're using power. So that was one thing that really interested me, was what are the different strategies that people have for using power? And the second thing that really interests me about the topic is, I'm a big fan of democracy, shall we say, and democracy is literally people power. And so it's about people using power to govern themselves and govern other people. And how well are we using power in that way? And so, as a sociologist, psychologist by training, by professional choice, I've noticed that, from a psychological perspective, we don't use power very well with ourselves. We can't break bad habits. We do things against our self-interest. We criticize ourselves harshly, or we let ourselves off the hook. So we're not really good at using power internally, but also from a sociological point of view, we're also not good at using power with others, right? We tend to promote our own self-interest, or we, get into power games and power struggles. So I thought there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to power. It's something that I could spend a whole lifetime looking about, learning about, and thinking about. So those are some of the reasons why I'm interested. Well, that's a great question, and it's an interesting question, because if people really thought about it, and we all know all the power games that are happening in the company. Every single day, our workplace is just filled with power games and power struggles. So if we really knew how expensive they were, we would make power our #1 priority. Some of the most common issues that plague workplaces today are problems related to power. Like you think about bullying and rude behavior, you think about discrimination and bias, micromanaging, or just think about the average team where people don't feel free to speak up, or teams are dominated by the same person or the same people all the time. And research shows that power problems are hugely expensive for companies and organizations. They spend billions of dollars a year on things associated with complaints, absenteeism, healthcare costs, when bullying, rude behavior, toxic workplaces, those things really have an expensive cost. People call in sick. Stress has a huge impact on people. Teams, when executive teams break down and they're competitive, they can't work well together, or on teams where people are, dominated by one person or a group of people or don't feel free to speak up, you're losing money on terms of productivity, great ideas, how people work well together. And that doesn't even include things like litigation or complaints. If you've got power problems that take the, discrimination, harassment, uncivil behavior, those things that actually get escalated to HR, those are very expensive. Just look at the turnover, lack of engagement, people quit when they can't get along. So there's a great deal of cost associated with power problems in the workplace. Well, I think that, as I said before, we all know about power. We engage with power problems and power dynamics all day long. But I think that one of the most important things is, we tend to think that power occurs only in hierarchical relationships. And so one thing to realize is that's not really true. Power occurs across all relationships, just competitive behavior, bullying behavior, uncivil behavior. Those things are, you don't need a hierarchical relationship to have problems of power in that way. And the other thing that's important is that, because power is a taboo, there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings about power. And one of the biggest misconceptions about power is that poor use of power is a character problem, like a character flaw, or it's a moral problem. And it's not. Misuse of power is simply a lack of education. It's a lack of learning, a lack of knowing. It's not a character issue. So sometimes we think that people who use power poorly do so because they have a moral flaw or bad character, and that's not true. So that's one thing. The second mistake people make is that they try to remove layers of hierarchy, or they try to flatten teams. They try to get rid of power. And so they think that if they kind of reduce hierarchy or remove titles or layers of management, that you can do away with power problems. But that's also dangerous. That's not true, because power problems occur in all areas of human interaction, right? So if you just take away titles, power still lives. It just lives underground. It's just harder to find. And so it's actually kind of more dangerous when you try to remove titles and power from the equation. And the third mistake that people make is that if they don't use power, right, if they just kind of hold back, if they underuse their power, they won't misuse their power. And that's a really big misunderstanding, because actually underuse of power makes just as many problems as overuse of power, right? If you don't step in, you don't assert, the authority, or you don't intervene when necessary, you let other people dominate, you let chaos reign, it's very confusing, you don't make the hard call, you don't hold people accountable, you don't hold difficult conversations with people. So that is in no way a better use of power. The Diamond Power Index is a scientifically valid leadership assessment that identifies critical opportunities related to how leaders use their power. So it measures productive, healthy uses of power and areas of opportunity where there could be further learning on how a leader uses their power. It's the only 360 in the market that I'm aware of that actually uses, that looks specifically at leadership competencies related to those particular behaviors that are problematic, that are related to discrimination or rude, uncivil behavior, inappropriate behavior, preferentialism, the very things that I think people really talk about in the workplace and that go directly to workplace culture. The DPI is a multi-rater instrument. It assesses leaders on both their use of power, but it also, in a self-assessment, asks them to rate themselves on their sense of power. And it provides a very developmental report. It's a very deeply developmental instrument that provides a customized pathway for development, suggestions for improvement, in-depth interpretation, and a workbook and guidebook for improving your leadership skills. Well, the Diamond Power Index has a multi-rater component to it where the leaders assessed on 7 dimensions of behavior, of leadership behavior related to the use of power, and the raters rate them on that. And then the leaders assess themselves on their sense of power, how well they feel able to impact and influence others using power. So they're rated on these 7 dimensions. One is approachability. How approachable are they? Can people speak to them? Do they create the conditions for people to speak up, contribute, engage, participate? The second one is empowerment. How able is the leader to empower others, to coach, to develop, to really know what it takes to bring the best out of their people? The other one is inappropriate behaviors, appropriate, respectful behaviors. How well does the leader understand how to talk to people, how to create the conditions for a safe and healthy workplace so people feel safe in the workplace, that they can speak up, that people aren't being rude, dismissive, or hostile with each other. The other one is conflict competence. Is the leader able to really step up and use power? Or are they too hesitant, right? So it's not just, as I said, it's not just underuse, it's appropriate use of power. So we measure on how well leaders are able to really assert and use their power with others. The other one is the leader able to promote, encourage, lead people evenly? Do they engage in preferentialism? You know, do they sort of let their personal preferences dictate their behavior? How evenly do they distribute rewards, promotion, opportunities to people? And then professional boundaries. Is the leader appropriate in their boundaries? Do they get a little enmeshed with people? Do they see themselves and understand themselves to be a representative of the organization, a representative of leadership, and do they conduct themselves accordingly? And finally, they are rated on their ability to kind of not indulge or act entitled, not to take too much advantage of their high power role. Can they place the interests of the organization ahead of their own team, their own project, their own political agenda, their own needs and interests? So the other thing is just to say that the leader then rates themselves on 3 dimensions of their personal power. Are they able, are they capable and are confident? Are they able to exert and influence and feel confident in their ability to engage others, to influence others? Do they have an awareness? Can they self-reflect? Do they see their strengths and weaknesses? Are they able to direct their focus and attention where they need to? And purpose. Are they drawn by a greater sense of purpose, and do they have resilience? Are they able to keep going in the face of difficulty and disappointment? So those are the personal power scales. So the Diamond Power Index, the value for an organization, it's a very developmental tool. So it provides a very supportive and a very detailed roadmap for leader development. You're able to look at the behaviors that are typically not included in 360s. Some 360s focus on general leadership competencies, which are important. Others focus on styles, personality traits. But the DPI actually offers specific behaviors. What is the leader doing that's furthering their leadership and furthering the development of the organization? And what are they doing where there's an opportunity for development? So it's very actionable. It's very developmental, and it also identifies potential for risk. You know, a lot of times when there's a problem with leaders, you don't know until complaints have been lodged. You don't know until people are leaving teams. You don't know until there's a lot of turnover. So this instrument actually identifies areas where there could be further down the track a problem area. So you're able to intervene quickly, and you're able to also intervene developmentally and provide the coaching and support that the leader needs to get back on track. You know, one of the things about the DPI is it's a great tool for leadership teams. For starters, it provides a language for using power. So if you've got a leadership team that could be more effective, a leadership team that's just coming together, maybe there's a leadership team where there's been a lot of turnover or it's been through a reorganization. Leadership teams, everyone can take the DPI. You can also get a group report. And you get a shared language for talking about the issues that bother you in a way that's not shaming or not problematic. So it's a great moment to use it with teams when teams need to lean in more with each other, to work more effectively. Another really big opportunity for the DPI when to use it is with intercultural differences. You know, you've got people from different cultures working together, and one of the places where people really differ culturally is with power and hierarchy and authority. People are more deferential in some cultures, they're less deferential, they're more egalitarian in some cultures. You especially see this in Europe, where you've got a lot of different cultural styles related to power. So where you've got a shared language and you can really help people see how they differ according to their power styles, this is a great tool for people to use to understand how they can sort of, where they can improve and how they can kind of jump over those different cultural barriers. Another opportunity is where you want to target someone who's rising in their leadership, maybe for high potentials, or in a leadership transition opportunity where somebody's going forward in their leadership, they're going up. What are the potential issues that might emerge? How are they already using their power? And what could be areas for greater development with their power? One of the areas where people could really use the DPI is where there's an opportunity for learning about self-management. A lot of organizations now are trying to flatten hierarchy, make teams more egalitarian, have self-managing teams. But in order to have a successful self-managing team, you actually have to know about power, because otherwise people are thinking they're all the same or thinking there's no power, but there really is. Everybody's always using power. So this is a great opportunity to help people understand what are my strengths and where are my opportunities and how I use power. And when it's not just a strongly hierarchical organization, what do I do that creates the condition for everybody to participate to the best of their ability?